Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, let's start off this video in South America. We know we've been talking over the last month about how things have really been dry, especially in parts here of Mato Grosso do Sul and Pará, so I'm really focusing in on this area. We've seen the Brazilian monsoon weaken over the last month, which we've been talking a lot about. I wanted to kind of show you the latest updates here on those deficits in precipitation, because we did recently get some rain, but a lot of that rain was falling in some locations on some pretty sandy soil. And in addition to that, we've also had the issues that it's been quite sporadic. So when we look at the overall kind of drought picture over the last month, we can see we built up a pretty sizable deficit in these three regions. So I've got Mato Grosso, that's the top graph. The middle graph here is kind of a blend of Mato Grosso do Sul and Paraná, and then the bottom one's down here in Rio Grande do Sul. So as we're thinking about how that first crop of beans, that short crop of beans is coming out of the ground, you know, it finished on some pretty dry conditions here as we look back over the last month or so. Now recently, I want you to kind of keep your eye right down here, okay? Recently, we've seen some pretty large thunderstorm complexes roll through parts of Argentina, Uruguay, and southern Brazil. I know you're looking at this going, wait a minute, I'm seeing quite a bit of precipitation in here. Now remember, this is a satellite estimated product, so what we're seeing here is a lot of hit or miss light precipitation events there in Brazil. But I'll tell you, in parts of Uruguay, southern Brazil, northern Argentina, they've been hit pretty hard. In fact, this was a video that surfaced on the day on Sunday showing some of the flooding in the streets here in parts of Uruguay. This guy decided to take his inner tube out. I thought it was a pretty funny video here to kind of show here with all the flooding. But the thing that I want you to see is this same pattern looks as though it's going to continue for the foreseeable future. What we've got here is we've got a weakened monsoon. So while it is raining inside of this area, especially over in this side of it, remember, this is less than normal. And because of the soil types in certain parts of Brazil, they've got to have a lot of rainfall to get these bean crops, and then of course the corn crop that's going to go in to do well. Meanwhile, in parts of southern Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina, it has been wet, and the model's picking up on that boundary, just kind of sitting right into this area. And over the next 15 days, it's expected to continue to stay very wet there. So this is some adversity coming out of South America, and I think it's certainly the weather market story right now that we can tell across the world. So let's go from there though back to North America. Our main story for North America is really going to be told as what's going on in the North Pacific. We've got a couple of large low pressure systems sitting here. This will be the first to kind of lash the West Coast with a lot of precip. And then of course we've got this big broad circulation that's moving through the middle part of the country that's bringing quite a bit of rain here. So we need to talk about this pattern. Let's kind of figure this one out together. All right. Next 7 days, what have we got? I got a map over here on the left, and I stayed up to the early morning hours on Monday to kind of wait for that 0Z model run to come in because I was quite anxious to see it. What do we see? A lot of the plain states relatively dry over the next 7 days. And that's because what we're going to see is some strong features coming into the West Coast. Look at how wet it is in parts of California, getting up into the coastal ranges here in Oregon and Washington, and then, of course, into the mountains here in the Rocky Mountains in Idaho and Montana. But the weather systems are kind of lifting in through this area. Now, at the same time, we got the subtropical jet that will be producing our first system that's going to go through on Monday and Tuesday, and then a second system on Friday. And that's a system I'm going to be watching right in through here. Because midweek, we're going to have a big outbreak of cold air that kind of comes out of Canada and comes snaking into the southeast. And if that cold air sticks around, by the time the system emerges in Texas on Friday, well, the latest 0Z model run projected some snow down there for where the Missouri, the Mississippi and Ohio rivers come together around Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, and Illinois, and even parts of Arkansas. Now, this is just one model run, and we're looking at snow that's being forecast for this upcoming Friday. So there's a lot of uncertainty in this, but we've seen multiple model runs over the weekend hint at this precipitation. In other words, this sucker's not nailed down yet, but we know that it's something we're watching toward the end of the week. Now, in the near term, this is what we're dealing with. Early Monday morning, a lot of widespread rain in through this area. That rain snow line pushed pretty far to the north as we talked about on some strong southerly winds. So as we animate this forward, getting you through the beginning of this week, this is just storm system number 1. So there it goes throughout the day on Monday. Now watch what's coming out of parts of Wyoming and Montana into the Dakotas here. We have a little upper level shortwave trough that kind of sneaks through there. Look at the lighter snow, mixed precipitation coming into parts of North and South Dakota by the time we get into the late evening hours on Monday. Meanwhile, the first system kind of goes off there to the north and east. Okay. Now, once that little shortwave trough, by the time we get into Tuesday morning, gets over the Great Lakes states, it then deepens over the northeast. We can see that on the back side of this, we've got some lake effect snow showers. But other than that large coastal low coming in out west, the middle part of the country stays relatively dry through the beginning of this week. Okay, what is the European model picking up on this same story? Well, let me get you out past the first system. So this is now valid getting into the morning on Wednesday. So look at all the lake effect snow. And that's because we got a big area of higher atmospheric pressure that's sitting right in through here. And we're going to be getting quite a bit of cold air sneaking in with this one. So a return back toward winter for some folks that saw a beautiful weekend this past weekend. Now that cold air is what's crucial right in through this area. I should have made that a little smaller. Right in that area for the potential for some snow. And let me show you what I'm talking about. By the time we get into later in the week, so this is now Thursday morning and Friday morning. We see this low pressure system coming out of Texas, Friday midday and a Friday evening. And if there is still enough cold air in place in this area, we will have cold enough air for snow there on the back side of that low. So that's what we're all trying to figure out this week, is how much snow is going to fall in this area through the coming days. Now, meanwhile, on the back side of this one will let you know, watch California again. Here comes system number 1. System number 2, system number 3, system number 4. That's right. Over the next 10 days or so, California has multiple onshore flow events coming from that very active region in the North Central Pacific, which we just talked about. So if we just come back to our snow discussion real quick here, just want to show you the European model and its ensemble members. There's 51 of them. Give it about a 50% chance in this area of having about 3 inches of snow by the time we get into early next week. Clearly in the higher elevations out west and in the northerly latitudes here, we're talking about a much, much better chance over the next 10 days of having at least 3 inches of snow. But my focus again was on that system coming out on Friday right in through here. Okay, now get back to our discussion about the two dominant features outside of the Pacific jet stream, okay? MJO went from phase 6 really quickly over the last 5 days through phase 7, is now in phase 8. Now, if the MJO were to stay in phase 8 and come out into phase 1 and 2 like this, I'd say cold air is on tap and not going anywhere for the eastern United States. But it's not. It's doing this. It's curling right back around to the null phase, which is in here. Meanwhile, the polar vortex has split. But as we've been discussing, it's taken a while for this stratospheric event to manifest itself into a tropospheric event, which was the level of the atmosphere we live in. And because of the way this is split, with the timing of the MJO and what's going on in the Pacific, it's not been something that set us up with a dominant cold pattern across the eastern half of the United States. And this is why. Now, these maps are a little tricky to look at here, but you're looking right down in the North Pole, so you can kind of get yourself oriented. The United States is right here. You see, what we have to watch is what's going on right inside here. The closer these troughs, you're going to see multiple troughs, the closer they get to the west coast, the more a ridge gets shoved over the eastern 2/3 of the United States. And that is just not a cold pattern, at least a sustained cold pattern. But we need to watch for troughs to retreat west, allowing for the pattern to change. So let's just kind of play this one forward. All right, here's the first trough right in through here. We're watching toward the middle of this week to kind of go up to the east coast and set off that bigger system. But look at the ridge that's behind it. So after that cold air comes in here, middle to end of the week, so see it right there. This is now valid by the time we get into the day on Thursday. And this is now valid for Friday evening. You see, it's this trough right here that gets us set up for the potential for snow there in parts of the Ohio River Valley. And you say, why is that? Well, we got a ridge that's setting up here out west and a broader trough here. Meanwhile, a piece from the subtropical jet stream gets into parts of Texas and goes off in a direction just like this. Now we've got cold air coming in like that. It's going to interact with this little shortwave trough that comes through midday Friday. Now let me get rid of the drawings and show you how this all evolves from there. That shortwave trough comes through. There it is, right there. And that's our potential for some snow in this section of the country. Meanwhile, another deep upper level system is hitting the west coast, pushing that ridge in this area, which brings back in the milder conditions. So now I'm out here on the 13th of January. Look at that trough coming over California. Look at the ridge in the middle part of the country. That is a warm pattern through mid-month. But now I want you to divert all your attention to the Aleutian Islands right here. As I continue to animate forward, you will see the trough establishing itself there by the 18th, 19th, and 20th. Now, why do I care about that? Well, if the jet stream does this and that trough retreats, we go into a positive Pacific North American pattern and potentially a high over low setup. Now, positive PNAs when there's a ridge out west and a trough out east. If at the same time we're able to develop some sort of blocking here over Greenland, this will allow for colder air toward the end of this month to finally get back in the eastern part of the country, which means a return back toward winter. Now, let me show you how this would manifest itself. This is now 10 days in the forecast. We're about out here on the 16th. This is a map showing you ensemble average and mean sea level pressure. Now, because of the repeated troughs here, the trajectory of the low pressure systems is in the northern United States. This is where they're projecting a low pressure system out here on the 16th. Now look, when that trough retreats by the time we get out to the 20th, that takes our low pressure systems much farther to the south, and hence the chances toward having more cold air that can invade here, and also the increased chances for more wintry type precipitation. But this pattern change I'm talking about is toward the end of the month. We're talking here past the 18th, 19th, and 20th. And that's why as I animate out for you temperatures, yeah, there's a brief cool down. See it right there? That's coming through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But watch what happens after this. Milder weather returns for the middle section of the country, and it hangs on all the way out to the 18th and 19th until the pattern possibly changes as we progress into the end of the third week and the fourth week of the month. Now, on January 5th, the long-range European model was released. So I'm going to show you the latest monthly forecast. I'm going to blend together both February and March because they look quite similar. Now, what's been going on so far this winter? Well, one, El Nino peaked a while ago, and it's not really been that large of a factor. We've been watching these two things, the Mount Julian Oscillation and the Pacific Jet Stream, and it's been seeing how they've been working either against or in concert with the polar vortex that's really controlled our flow. Now, to get this forecast over here on the right in February and March, if the European model is right, we need to see split flow. We need to see the atmosphere doing this. And if it does that, we get into that positive PNA pattern, we get a high over low. And if that happens, we will see drier conditions out west as the model is currently forecasting. At the same time, if we can get a block over Greenland, this will give us the negative NAO pattern, which gives us more frequent troughs out west. And if all that sets up, I most certainly buy the forecast by the European model calling for cooler than average weather here. Cooler than average. What I'm confused about is the drier pattern you see the model picking up on in this area. Now remember this, it can be cold and dry and there's still a lot of snow. There's not much water in snow. So overall, we'll just have to keep a very close eye on that as we progress forward. I'll just tell you this as we wrap up this forecast. The European model, I went back and looked at it over the last 3 months. It's been doing a pretty good job on picking up on monthly anomalies. It did a pretty good job with both December and January, and it's been trending cooler into February. And there is multi-model support for this. This is the CFS V2 looking out into week 3 and week 4. And you can see that that warmer pattern is forecast to break down by the time we get into week 4 by 2 of our best long-range global models. So in the near term, we got some warmer weather, more northerly storm track, but it looks like as we get toward the end of January and we get over into February, things could take a turn more toward the more wintry side of things. We'll keep you updated multiple times a week with what we see going on here, okay? With that, I'm going to wrap this forecast video up. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions, thank you for your attention. Hope you look forward to our next video coming out early Thursday morning. Thank you.